So welcome everybody to the Safeguarding Adults Week, Week of Learning. My name is Chloe Roberts. I'm a project officer for the Safeguarding Adults Board. So today's our last session across the week, and the session will cover domestic abuse and sexual violence. So we've got 4 presenters from 5 different organisations who are going to be speaking today. Just before we start, a bit about the Safeguarding Adults Board. So here's our email address and our contact details. If you ever need to get in contact with us, please do pick up the phone and I'll be the one receiving your call. So you happily speak to me if you've got any queries about anything. We also have a website and a Twitter account. So please do follow us on Twitter and let us know that you've attended today's session. So I will now hand you over to our first speaker, Rachel.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rachel Percival. I'm a senior advocate for the Sunflower Centre, which kind of sits within Voice for Victims and Witnesses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just give a very, very brief overview around domestic abuse, as I know our colleagues here from NDAS are also doing so. And then I'll talk a little bit about our services. So first, what we need to understand is what is domestic abuse. So it's the use of it's like behaviours or tactics to exert power and control over someone, to make them behave in a certain way or to conform to what the abuser wants. For the term domestic abuse to apply, the parties do need to be or have been in an intimate relationship or be family members. So it's not just limited to your partner or ex-partner. Your parent, your child, your cousin can be considered to be a perpetrator of domestic abuse. In March 2013, the Home Office announced that the definition of domestic abuse would be widened to include those aged 16 to 17 years, and the wording to reflect coercive control. So the official definition of domestic abuse is any incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive, or threatening behaviour, violence, or abuse between those aged 16 or over who are or who have been intimate partners or family members, and this is regardless of gender or sexuality. And it's important to remember that domestic abuse does not discriminate, and it can occur regardless of age, gender, marital status, sexuality, or financial status. So there's several different types of domestic abuse, and it could include psychological, physical, sexual, financial, emotional, and coercion and control. Now, coercion and control is something that's recently been brought into legislation as an offence, which is obviously fantastic for going forward. So what I'd like to look at is the power and control wheel, which you can see on the screen there. So this is a tool that helps to explain the different ways an abusive partner can use power and control to manipulate a relationship. So this wheel that you see is often used by professionals to help victims of abuse and recognise any of the warning signs in their own relationship. So if we look at the wheel, you can see coercion and control. We're starting off at the top. So using threats, making and carrying out threats to do something to hurt the other person, threatening to leave, to commit suicide, or to report the other person to authorities, making the other person drop charges, or making them do illegal things. And then we'll go around clockwise. Intimidation, making the other person afraid by using looks, actions, and gestures, smashing things, destroying the other person's property, abusing pets, and displaying weapons. So all things to intimidate the partner. And then emotional abuse, so that could be putting the other person down, making the other person feel bad about themselves, calling names, making the other person think they're crazy, which you may also hear as gaslighting, playing mind games, humiliating the other person and making them feel guilty. Isolation, so controlling what the other person does, who they see and talk to, what they read, where they go, and limiting their outside involvement and using jealousy to justify their own actions. And then there's also minimising, denying and blaming, so making light of the abuse and not taking their concerns about it seriously, saying the abuse didn't happen, or shifting the responsibility for the abusive behaviour onto the partner. So you may hear people say, well, you make me do this. That's a very, very common tactic. or saying that the other person caused it. So using children, making the other person feel guilty because of the children, or using the children to relay messages, using visitation to harass the other person, or making threats to take the children away. So in a standard, a lot of the time we will talk about domestic abuse in a heteronormative relationship. So this is where male privilege may come in if the abuser is male and victim is female. So treating her like a servant, making all the big decisions, acting like master of the castle, and being the one to define men's and women's roles. And then lastly, we'll look at economic abuse. So preventing the other person from getting or keeping a job, making them ask for money, giving the other person allowance or taking their money, and not letting the other person know about or have access to the family income. If you put all this together, it starts to create a very clear picture of coercive and control, and you can see how that power and that control can lead to perpetrators completely dominating their victim. So that was a very, very brief introduction around domestic abuse. So next I'd like to talk about assessing the risk. So before I explain about our services, it is really important that we clarify how we establish this risk. So one of the most commonly used risk assessments is the DASH. This is the list of questions designed to identify the main risks of domestic abuse and to help practitioners safety plan with this information. It consists of a list of questions and asks about things such as fear, risks to children, pregnancy, and types of abusive behaviour, so strangulation and sexual abuse. The DASH was created with the aid of Laura Richardson, who compiled these questions as she identified the high risk factors for domestic abuse. So once a DASH has been completed, you can evaluate and decide the risk level. If it's 14 and above on the DASH, the risk is then considered high. So that is, there are identifiable indicators of risk of serious harm, and the potential event could happen at any time, and the impact would be life-changing. If it's between 13 and 6, then the risk level would be considered medium, and there are identifiable risks of harm. The offender is likely to cause serious harm, but if there is a change in circumstances. And if the DASH is between 5 and 0, the risk level is standard, so no significant current indicators of a risk of serious harm. It's also important to note that while it's a great indicator of risk, it's not just that number that matters, and it's important to consider your own professional judgment also. So especially when we're looking outside of that heteronormative relationship. So for example, LGBTQ plus relationships, many of the DASH questions wouldn't apply, but you could look at other methods about what raises your concerns with that risk level. So the Sunflower Centre, I will start first and then I'll go on to talk about voice. So we at the Sunflower Centre are the county's partnership-funded independent domestic violence advisory service, and we also incorporate the MARIC team in that as well. It's funded by the County Clinical Commissioning Group, West Northampton, Northampton Councils, and the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, so we get our funding from all different places. It's a free service for the highest risk victims and survivors of abuse within the county of Northamptonshire. We have a team of fully accredited IDVAs who provide a crisis response, safety planning and risk management to victims of domestic abuse. We are the referral mechanism for Northamptonshire Police into MARIC, and we deal only with clients who have been assessed as high risk using the DASH risk assessment tool, professional judgment reasoning, or who are subject of honour-based abuse or forced marriage. So, services we provide. We have qualified accredited IDVAs. We have a qualified stalking advocate and a dedicated hospital IDVA service who's based at both Northampton General Hospital and Kettering General Hospital. We have a specialist diversity and inclusion IDVA service, so for minority ethnic groups, and specifically with a focus on honour-based abuse. We have specialist IDVA support clients with multiple complex needs. So an IDVA who works solely with those clients who perhaps have those additional barriers. That could be your mental health, that could be substance or drug misuse. And so she works specifically with those clients to enable that kind of engagement with them. We also have emergency crisis response IDVAs, so deployable from the control room on Friday and Saturday nights. So from 5 p.m. to about 2 in the morning, we have a set of IDVAs in the control room at the police who are reacting quick time to when incidents come in. We also have court supported at all county specialist domestic abuse courts who tend to represent the wishes and wants of the victim whose perpetrator is potentially in court. And we also have a wide range of training deliveries to agencies, professionals, public, and a specialist police officer training programme also. So we work to identify those most at risk of domestic abuse, honour-based violence and forced marriages, and we work to provide victims and survivors to achieve a life free from abuse. We provide victims and survivors with advice, information and options. We give victims and survivors a voice and enable them to be heard through advocacy, which is one of the kind of core values of our role, is that we are there to be a voice for victims. We help access domestic abuse services or programmes across the county. We provide crisis intervention, including support for refuges, accommodation, housing or emergency orders. We have a thorough and bespoke safety planning, identification of risk and a full needs assessment with every single client. So we tailor it to their needs and wants also. We do risk management, emotional support and counselling, as well as support through the criminal justice system, which can be really, really daunting for someone who is never experienced that or is in a domestic abuse relationship. We also have a provision of personal and home safety products and emergency escape packs also. And we work closely with other service providers in the county to provide access pathways to things like refuge, alternative accommodation and programme work. So that's a little bit about what we do at Sunflower Centre. So I'm going to then talk about MARAC. So the MARAC is a meeting where information is shared on these highest risk domestic abuse cases. So MARAC stands for a multi-agency risk assessment conference. The very first MARAC was held in 2003, and now MARACs are routinely held all over the UK. So there's over 270 MARACs operating across England, Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland. So if you attend a MARAC, it's it's a representation of various agencies to provide that multi-agency approach to safeguarding victims. So we hear it's normally in this county, it's around 15, 16 cases per meeting, with a time allocated to each case. The victim herself or himself does not attend, but is represented by an IDVA who speaks on their behalf. Excuse me. So going back to that advocacy throughout the whole process. The agencies that attend MARAC do include the police, the IDVA service, probation, children's services, mental health, primary health, substance misuse services, housing, adult safeguarding, as well as other domestic abuse services. So NDAS may attend, Eve may attend also. We also do have schools who attend as well. After sharing all the information that's relevant at a MARAC, the representatives will discuss options for increasing the safety of the victim and turn these into a coordinated action plan. And it's important that one thing we focus on is not just the victim, but how we can proactively disrupt the perpetrator as well. Because obviously it's not the victim's fault that they're in that relationship. So before we go ahead, I talk about voice, I'd like to talk about a multi-agency working, a case study that we had recently. So the Sunflower Centre was contacted by the police due to the concerns about a high-risk victim who could not return to her home due to the level of risk from her ex-partner. So her name was Hayley, and she had 2 young children as well as mobility issues, which obviously raised the risk, it increased her vulnerability. So an IDVA from the Sunflower Centre supported Hayley and contacted housing. So we worked together with housing to ensure that Hayley and her children were housed in suitable temporary accommodation. The case was assessed at high risk and was referred to MARAC, where the children and adult social workers, housing and police, amongst others, were in attendance. And at that MARAC, an action plan was agreed for the social workers and the IDVA to work together to support Hayley and her children. So this included support with applying for legal orders, enrolling the children in new schools and managing their well-being, aiding Hayley with her mobility issues. Housing complete safeguarding measures to ensure the new property was secure, and the police were able to make proactive arrest attempts. And following Hayley receiving that support from all these services, she felt able to support a police prosecution. She's now safe and living a life free from the abuse that her ex-partner perpetrated against her. And this was only possible due to the multi-agency working from all services. So it's really, really important around all these agencies working together to share information and to safeguard. So next, I will be talking about Voice for victims and witnesses. So as I said previously, Sunflower Centres sit within Voice, so the wider Voice service. So it is a service that is commissioned and funded by the Office of the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner. So to provide free, confidential and independent advice, guidance and support to those who have been either a victim of crime, witness to crime going through the court process, a victim of repeated antisocial behaviour, or a victim or witness of family member affected by life-changing fire incidents or road traffic collisions. So there's a lot going on at what we do at Voice. We have access to a wide network of local and national services, and we provide a single point of contact for the residents of Northamptonshire to help guide them to appropriate support that best meets their individual needs. Crime and trauma can affect people in a number of different ways, and while many do find that the effects are short term, the impact can be felt for much longer for some. Changes in how people feel following being a victim of crime, a serious fire or road traffic incidents are common, and many are surprised at the strong emotions that can be experienced. And this does include obviously anger, upset or anxiety. So it could be that we provide a chat about how someone's feeling, providing crime prevention advice, guiding people through the criminal justice system, supporting people living in abusive situations, helping to navigate services, providing dedicated regular one-to-one emotional support sessions with our team of highly skilled staff and volunteers, or referring to one of our specialist service providers for trauma therapy or counselling. We recently have also been awarded the Victims' Choice Quality Mark, which evidences our dedication to supporting those who have been victims of crime. So, under this big Voice umbrella, there are a number of services. So we have a Voice adult service, a dedicated children and young people service, a restorative justice service, and a dedicated road harm service. So if we look at our adult service, we support victims of all crime types who are aged over 18 years. There are some restrictions, but we'll go into them later on in this presentation. We also deliver a witness care unit for the county. So this provides support to all and any victims and witnesses of crime who are progressing through the criminal justice system. So we provide practical and emotional support to victims and witnesses who are required to attend court in the form of assessing need for special measures, assisting with travel or accommodation arrangements, or liaising with partner agencies regarding victim and witness availability. So it's just making sure that those who have to attend court have that support throughout. Our adult service, so Voice for Adults, provides the triage service for all referrals coming into all of the Voice provisions. And we provide the initial contact with those who have been self-referred in, those who've been referred by professionals, and those we proactively contact following a reported crime to Northamptonshire Police. And this includes a team of specialist support workers who work with medium and standard risk victims of domestic abuse. Our Children and Young People Service provides support to those between 6 to 18 years of age, and this support can also extend up to 25 years where there are additional needs also. We offer a safe and professional restorative justice service, so making sure there's a safe pathway for victims and offenders, bringing them into contact to allow victims to express the impact that the offending behaviour has had on them and their lives, and for the offender to make suitable reparation for the harm that has been caused. We have a dedicated road harm service, so we offer emotional and specialist trauma therapy and bereavement support to victims and their families directly involved in serious collisions. And for those who have been seriously injured, to the immediate families of those who have been deceased following a fatal collision, as well as to witnesses traumatised following direct involvement in a collision. So we also obviously deliver the IDFA service, which I've already talked about. Finally, as part of Voice commitment supporting victims of crime, we also manage the contract provision for the county's ISVAs, which I believe are, so they're based within the Sexual Assault Referral Centre at Northampton Hospital Serenity, who I believe are here, so I will let them go further into that. We do act as a single door for victims and witnesses to access support, and where there is support and a support need identified, we'll seek to use our wide directory of local and national service providers to seek the most appropriate advice, guidance, information or support for that individual's needs, and we work closely with other partner agencies to do so. So, what crime types can be referred to voice? To put it simply, every single one. As I said, we do act as a single door for the county, and we seek support for victims and witnesses of all crime types. So we can refer people to national or local service providers dependent on their circumstances. Where someone has been affected, so for example, by homicide, we can refer the immediate family for support with the National Homicide Service. And where the person is not affected is not immediate family, we can also seek support alternatively locally or provide support through our adult services where appropriate. So we receive referrals for serious sexual violence, domestic abuse, stalking and harassment, persistent antisocial behaviour, hate crimes, theft and fraud, burglary, robbery, criminal damage, assaults, modern slavery and trafficking, honour-based abuse, and so on. And we do ensure that the victim is supported by the service that best meets their needs. And we do have an effective step-up, step-down process to guide victims between our services. So if someone who's experiencing domestic abuse and was assessed as medium risk, it can be supported by a specialist support worker. It may be that at some point the risk it increases, and we have an easy process to go, okay, over to Sunflower Centre to support you. So a really streamlined process to do that. So, referral criteria. We are available and accessible to anyone over the age of 6 years who has been a victim of crime, persistent antisocial behaviour, or affected by serious life-changing fire or road incidents. So we can only offer our emotional and specialist support services to those who are resident in the county of Northamptonshire. But if someone does experience a crime in Northamptonshire, but they live outside of the area, we do direct victims and witnesses to the services in their local area. So we don't just say, no, we can't help you. We do make sure that they get the support that's available to them in their county. We accept self-referrals and third-party referrals where there's been victim consent to do so. And we have service level agreements and direct referral mechanisms with EMAS, so the ambulance service, as well as with the NHS and NHFT trusts. We do act as joint data controllers for the Northamptonshire Police, and we proactively contact all victims of crime who have been reported to Northamptonshire Police within 24 hours of each day. So if you are a victim of crime, you will hear from us within 24 hours if you've consented to do so. All of our services are free and confidential, and you do not have to have reported to the police to access our services. However, those who do access our service, we will make them aware that where there are safeguarding concerns, that we need to talk about the confidentiality of that. So the crime, the fire or road traffic collision can have occurred at any time. So we do accept referrals for historic and non-recent incidents also. And we have no exclusions to crime types that can be referred to our services. Specialist trauma therapy and counselling support is available to children and young people, high-risk DA victims of abuse, and people affected by road traffic collisions where there's been life-changing injuries or bereavements. We do have some exclusions. So, for example, we cannot support those under 6 years of age. We can't support those not within Northamptonshire. We cannot support those who are institutionalised at Her Majesty's pleasure or within mental health or care environments. We can't support young people who are living in an ongoing family domestic abuse situation. So we can refer those sorts of cases to children's safeguarding, and we can support once they're out of the domestic abuse household. And for road harm services, we do exclude those who are the perpetrator offenders of the collision as well. So we do have a few times where we have to exclude service to some. So lastly, if you do know someone who needs support or advice or has been a victim or witness of crime, abuse, fire or road traffic collisions, you can direct them to our services. And as I said, it doesn't matter how long ago the incident occurred, it doesn't matter where it occurred, and it doesn't matter if they've not reported to the police or not, we can help them access that support. So you can visit our website, www.voicenorthants.org, or email us at info@voicenorthants.org also. We are on Twitter, though please don't refer someone's personal details over Twitter. It's more if you want to talk about or like ask a general query about our services. And you can also telephone in on the number, so 0300 303 1965 also. If you're a professional, you can refer someone in through the website. And there's a button there that says make a professional referral, and then it will come to us and we will triage and decide which service is best to support. And if you are looking to do a MARAC referral, this again can also be completed through the Voice website. So again, for cases where domestic abuse with the dash is 14 plus or professional judgment. Is there any questions that anyone has either about the Sunflower Centre, Voice or MARAC? No, as always, if you have any queries or anything like that, I will pop my email in the chat. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. But thank you very much for listening to me, and I'll hand it over.
Thank you. I take it as my turn seeing that. Thank you, Rachel. How do I follow that, to be honest? As Rachel's gone over a lot to do with domestic abuse, this is just about our service. My name's Matthew Cunningham. I work for Northampton Domestic Abuse Service. I'm one of the supervisors for the north of the county. And this is just about, we're just going to go through about our service and what we can do and how we can do it and how we can partnership work. And first of all, I think it's important to say how important partnership working is, especially we have a very good relationship with all domestic abuse services, but including every safeguarding service that happens within the county and also outside of the county. And without partnership working, I don't really think it's able to work as well to keep people safe. So to begin with, NDAS, the service, the advice line, this is where you can call. I appreciate, I see in the chat that some of the text is quite small, but we're happy to give out these slides and they can go out to any professional who needs them. We have a 24-hour advice line, and that includes safety planning, risk assessment, and trauma-informed emotional support, accommodation advice, benefits advice, advice regarding children. When we say advice regarding children, that's a lot to do with safeguarding, whether they're a victim of domestic abuse themselves and could be triaged into our services, which we have regarding working around children. We call them CDASs, so children domestic abuse specialists, and they work within the family, try to give a holistic approach to working with vulnerable people and victims of domestic abuse. So we also have for NDAS, we have virtual support, which is we have a drop-in service, different types of drop-ins all over the county. I think it's on the next slides on where they are. Web chat, Facebook Messenger. We also have an outlet on Twitter as well. But as Rachel said, for everything is confidential. It's not to give out people's information, and we also use enough. I don't want to call it spyware, but enough protection where to see if there's any indication of anybody that is not using the service to be able to use it correctly and safely. These are drop-in services. So we have a drop-in service in each area of the county. I know the county is split up in different ways. Some use it as north and west. We identify as north and west with the demographic, with the geographic of the area of the county, but also we know there's Northamptonshire is such a big area that there's little pockets of areas that we can help support with that. That could also have, we can also use different types of properties to have drop-in service for one-to-ones when they're appointment only based. So we have one in Rushden, Kettering, Vaughan's, Wellingborough, 2 in Northampton, and the kind of town centre and around that, Daventry and Towcester. Our outreach support, is a 12-week intensive support program for victims of domestic abuse. After initial assessment and risk assessment and support plan and completed using our outcome star. Sorry, just go back on that. We understand that it's not particularly regimented in that they must have 12 weeks and people must be within the service with 12 weeks. We try to expand it in a way where is victim focused and it's for the need of the victims and the victim's family. We can either do that one-to-one, go within the home, or provide a safe space for the victim to be able to access support. And the support wise is everything from legal support to safety planning to seeking refuge and anything around the victim's needs of keeping them safe with domestic abuse. Also, if we identify that it's a higher risk through the DASH process and it needs to be marked, as Rachel said, we tend to use Sunflower Centre and Voice for partnership working to see where the kind of risk lies. So if there's high risk, we partnership work with Sunflower Centre to ensure there's the best available support for the victim and the victim's family. Group work programs that we have, we don't have the Freedom program anymore. We use Voice, a program called Voice, not to be mixed up with the Association of Voice of what Rachel just spoke about, but Voice stands for Victims of Immediate Coercion Experiences. So I kind of tend to use it as a updated version of the Freedom program. And also we have Your Power to Change, which is a new program, a 10-week program for individual displaying behaviours of perpetrator. That is, like I said, just a new active thing that's coming in that we've been commissioned to use through it being identified through the new domestic abuse bill that has been identified that would be efficient to work with people that want to identify and change behaviours, which you also have a divided opinion on as well. Other service groups that we have a domestic abuse recovery toolkit. This is tailored to meet the need of Black and brown female victims of domestic abuse. This is rolled out not just within our county, but I think with county-wide, it's been very good, successful. If you go online, you can have a look to see the different outcomes that you see from that in different areas of the country and the kind of postcode lotteries of how it works with one side of the country to the other side of the country, but overall been very good in the outcomes of with that and provided a specific need for that demographic. Safe accommodation. NDAS has 9 refuge across the county. We have a male refuge, which I think is one of 9 or 10 within the country. A drug and alcohol refuge, when we support people that with drug and alcohol need or been dependent on drug and alcohol, and also work with other services like S2S and other services that are around to help rehabilitate, but essentially identify the need of escaping domestic abuse or if they're within a domestic abuse relationship to identify that need around that. And we have a diverse refuge. I know diverse is kind of a broad spectrum to use for people, but that's under the BAME contract of Black, Asian, minority and ethnic groups. So we use that as an area for people of different communities to be able to flee safely. And also within that, we have specialist diverse workers to help anybody with no recourse to public funds or anyone going through honour-based abuse, and to also to have communication with anybody within the area to help us identify those needs again. We also have individual flats that have been identified for us to use for LGBTQ plus community, and anybody from from that kind of diverse group, from that community group who is needed and don't feel safe going to either a female refuge or a male refuge. We have safe spaces for people of that demographic too. All refuges have spaces for children as well. We could support up to 33 victims and 52 children, which also come on as being victims of domestic abuse. So refuge addresses are confidential, and it's designed for a safe space for people to escape for domestic abuse. I think most people would know that. It's just we also we're not just getting people into a safe space and helping them with a safe space. We're also trying to help them to empower we also help to empower them to empower themselves, and also go through a program on trying to spin my words out, go through a program so we use it correctly, where we're not just having somebody as using our service as a befriending service. We also go through a program to help them go for safety planning, to go through their journey of safety, so what they were from the beginning to how they are towards the end, and also to help them get kind of a better life and better understanding of domestic abuse. So on that, working within refuge, we use a system called the Empowerment Star. I know some other companies use it, some other charity organisations use it, but it's to help identify people's needs specifically, and also for workers to be able to use their time correctly while working with people with domestic abuse, and understanding that they're going through a traumatic experience, and it's not just taking all the work away from them and for them to be dependent on the service, but to helping them to empower themselves too. Within that, we have children's workers. So if there's any children that come into refuge, we have specific children workers that work with them so we have a worker working with the adults and a worker working with the children, but working from the same plan, and the same kind of network system for them to be kept safe. So working with children, a support program who have witnessed and experienced children. We know under the domestic abuse bill now that children are seen as victims of domestic abuse, not witnesses of domestic abuse, which gives it a clearer insight for them to be safe and them to be helped and supported through the journey. I won't read out every single tiny detail on these slides, just to go through them, that we basically create a safe space for children and have ongoing working within the schools or with children's services, and again, partnership working from the same plan to help children identify domestic abuse, and more importantly, to keep safe from domestic abuse. Also, there's group work around children and parents. So we have the programs You and Me and Mum, Me and Others, Me and Us, and Who's in Charge program. They're quite high. You can see lots more information on our website around the detailing of that, and how to refer in, and age groups, and the kind of, I'd say, the kind of assessment stage on how to get within them programs. But through all of those programs, we should be able to support anybody of any age group, of any kind of background demographic, and also children to parent to children. This is just a referral pathway we go through. So it's someone can either call our advice line or reach us through the website, or also being passed on from referrals from other agency. We dash everybody that comes on to that we speak to, that come on to, that is willing to participate in a dash. We dash everybody to see the level of risk and then kind of take it from there, really. I don't really want to teach everybody what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing within domestic abuse, but it's the same sort of system that as anybody else to try and keep them safe. Following that, it is important that we respond appropriately, victim led, as I keep saying throughout the session, and also very big on self-care for us, for not just service users, but for the professionals to have lots of supervision, lots of self-care, and to take part in external supervisions as well. So we've got all round mental health structure that's going around, and mental health first aiders within the client group to help everybody to work efficiently, but also for people to understand that there's such thing as vicarious trauma, and people hearing the things that they have to hear all day, every day, that they're being helped along the way, and that we're giving the right support to them. We also have training packages, so all accredited packages. We have a domestic abuse awareness, the impact of abuse on children and young people, American Dash risk assessment. At the end, that's also can help your organization, so we can go into organizations, not just team meetings, but also go into organization, do day training, things like that. And also we are coming soon as honor-based abuse training with accredited qualified person who's going to be coming in and taking over that. So that should be coming soon too. Local support, and excuse me if I've missed anybody out who's on here. If I have missed anybody out, because you can get in contact with us so we can make sure that we're giving awareness to everybody else who we could partnership work with. These slides will be going out in case I'm going too quick for it. I always say how important it is not just to be Northamptonshire, but to seek advice from people without the county, because coming into our refuge, most people are coming from out of county and from a long way away. So it's important to understand the kind of structures and what's going on around the country. And through that, do we have any questions? Sorry, mate. Right. Well, thank you, and I'll pass you on to Dawn. Is it you next? Yes, my favourite.
Thanks, Matt. Right. Okay, Chloe, I'm assuming that you're going to move on the slides. Morning, everyone. Not yet. Go back to that one. Thank you, Chloe. Morning, everyone. My name is Dawn Thomas, and I'm from Northamptonshire Rape Crisis. Northamptonshire Rape Crisis is a charitable organisation, and we are autonomous from health, and we are also autonomous from police. We do, however, have the fortune of sharing the building with Voice. So we occupy the second floor of Warwick House, where we have 8 female-only counselling rooms, and we support our men and boys on the ground floor with counselling rooms as well. As an organisation, we are members of BACP. So we deliver our services within the ethical framework of BACP. We are also members of the national organisation Rape Crisis England and Wales. And again, all our service provisions are delivered within the framework of Rape Crisis England and Wales. There are 39 rape crisis centres up and down England and Wales. There are 17 in Scotland. There are 3 in Wales, and 5 in Ireland. Together as a membership body, we all come together to lobby for changes in legislation around sexual violence, to the police, to the courts, and to health provisions, including mental health. So what do we provide? Predominantly, we are a support organisation providing counselling. So we provide up to 26 weeks, potentially more, of trauma-informed counselling. That is delivered once a week, same counsellor, same time, to all clients that have been assessed for their appropriateness to receive that psychological engagement. Where it's felt that clients require some stabilisation work, then what we're able to do is offer emotional support. And we can offer up to 12 weeks of emotional support, and then we can, if needs be, transition into counselling, and we can continue their support through the counselling process. We also provide ISVA provision. We have 2 ISVAs. That's an independent sexual violence advisor. That's supporting clients that are exploring the opportunity or the potential of reporting to the police. We can do it in kind of 2 ways. A client may approach us, and we will give them an initial assessment for their appropriateness to access us as an organisation. And if during that assessment they talk about exploring reporting to the police, then the assessor will pass them on to one of our ISVAs. Alternatively, at the end of a counselling 26 weeks, at the end of that counselling provision, a client may then wish to explore reporting to the police, and then that counsellor will signpost the client into the ISVA. And with the ISVA, they will explore the options, and the ISVA can invite the police to Warwick House, where they do an informal meeting. It doesn't matter whether the incident has been recent or whether it is historic. Just over 80% of our clients that access support from us are adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse or historic rape. So, as I said, we are open to historic and more recent sexual violence acts. We also provide group work. We've just finished an 8-week psychoeducational pilot group that was delivered in conjunction with IAPT. And we're just reviewing that to see if we will roll that out as a part of our service provision. We offer a helpline, and when we're not available on the helpline, there is an option to phone the National 24/7 Rape Crisis England and Wales helpline. As I said before, our services are for women and girls, men and boys, all genders. We are able to deliver support. Sorry, I missed that comment about honour-based. If somebody wants to unmute themselves and ask that question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, sorry for interrupting. I was just I'm coming from Cork in Ireland here, so I've never heard of it here in Ireland. I was just looking for, but somebody has given me a kind of a synopsis there of it. I've never heard of it here, so that's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we are trauma informed. So that means when we are assessing the client, we are looking at their psychological well-being, their emotional well-being, and their physical well-being. So we're looking at all of the clients, their needs, their support network, and how we can work together. You're welcome, Una. How we can work together to go along the process for recovery, coping, and then moving on. That's what we want to achieve. We have to do a really robust and very probing initial assessment, because we are aware that in order to do the process, sometimes things get more difficult before they get better. So we talk about the client support network. We have a emergency contact in case it's a difficult session. We will never share with that emergency contact what the issue is. We would just make sure that the client will link in with that emergency contact just to sit, have coffee, or just to be present in that moment. We are also able to signpost a client. I'll come back to that again. We are also able to signpost a client to one of the 39 other rape crisis centres up and down England and Wales. For example, if a client started the process with Northampton and was going off to Leeds University in September, we are able to signpost clients up into Leeds Rape Crisis and vice versa. So any other rape crisis centre can signpost to another, and we will pick that person back up as to where they are on the waiting list, or if they are in if they're in session, then we will match them with an appropriate counsellor. Next slide, please, Chloe. Is for provision. So independent sexual violence advisor. We have 2 independent sexual violence advisors, and they are able to support the client access the criminal justice system. So if a client has not yet reported, we are able to invite the police here at Warwick House, as opposed to going to the client's home. We try to keep the client's home as a safe space. So the client will be invited to our offices here in Warwick House. The ISFA will sit with the client as they explore the opportunities, the options, the length of time it potentially will take for an investigation, for it to go to the CPS, for it to go to the court. And on average, that's about 3 to 5 years at the moment, possibly longer because of COVID. The ISFA will work with that client throughout all of the criminal justice system. Some of our clients have issues with housing debt, with education, etc. And the ISFA's role is to advocate for that client. If we need an extension on a dissertation or any essays for school, sixth form, etc., then the ISFA can advocate for that for the client. Any issues with debt, the ISFA can advocate again and get some debt release in there. She will work with the appropriate organisation to provide the client that support if and when needed. Any issues with children, linking into social services, CAFs, the ISFA again will support the client and be an advocate for that client in any one of those meetings. When and if the time comes for a decision to be made by the CPS and then go on to court, the ISFA will follow that process with the client and end up in court with the client supporting the client through that court process. If a decision is made by the CPS, no further action, and the client wishes to challenge, the ISFA will do that challenge for that client in conjunction with that client. So we can challenge police decision to no further action. We can challenge the CPS's decision for no further action. And we can organise sort of protective measures in court, like screens, special measures in court for the client if that's something that they would like. It doesn't matter where the court case is. If ISFA is working with a client and the court case is in Croydon, that ISFA will travel to Croydon. Thank you. Next slide, please. Men and boys, we do support, we're one of 50% of rape crisis centres that support men and boys impacted by sexual violence. Men and boys only make up 8% of our clients, but that 8% actually replicates the national average. of men and boys reporting sexual violence to the police. We're still trying to increase that number. In terms of trans and non-binary, they make up just under 0.5% of our clients accessing our services. But again, with men and boys and trans non-binary clients, we are trying to increase those figures. Campaigning. Campaigning is something that we do as a local organisation here, but also as a national organisation. There are three things currently we're campaigning for, and we have been campaigning for the first one, which is access to mental health support for adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. There is a legacy with childhood sexual abuse with complex PTSD. Where that complex PTSD is embedded in childhood, it's very difficult to get clients into talking therapy via IAPT. So this year we did a pilot project with IAPT and NRC. It was an 8-week psychoeducational group because we recognised that there was a gap in provision for adult survivors of childhood sexual violence. We had 11 clients signed on to the group, but that number dropped to 9. And at the moment, we are reviewing that pilot to see whether we can roll it forward for another tranche of 8 weeks. The issue is we have to hit targets on access, so the number of bums on seats, and recovery, so movement from their first, interim and outgoing scores. So that's been currently reviewed. The other thing that we are campaigning for is counselling notes not to be used in court. So the Home Office made a brilliant decision that clients seeking counselling prior to going to court, so if there's a criminal investigation ongoing, we as an organisation would deliver emotional support that would be delivered by the ISFAs. But actually the Home Office decided actually that is unfair, because it is incredibly unfair, that actually if clients want counselling, they can have what's called pre-trial therapy. There's a caveat to that because the therapy notes would be called as part of evidence, which feels grossly unfair when somebody's trying to process a trauma and the notes that the therapist makes can be used by the defence as well as prosecution. So we're campaigning that client notes, pre-trial therapy notes, should be kept confidential regardless. The other thing that we've just started to unpick and understand a little bit more about, and many of you on this call may be aware of it, is the need for mandatory reporting. So mandatory reporting, we are campaigning for rape crisis centres to be exempt from mandatory reporting. Historically, over 89% of our clients are adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. When we do the assessment, we do ask for the perpetrator name. Going forward, if the government gets, on statute, the need for mandatory reporting, if we take that perpetrator's name, we are legally bound to report historic childhood sexual abuse. So we're campaigning against that. Anybody got any thoughts on that? No? Okay. Next slide, please. Oh, there's a... Okay. Was that Carla? I didn't see your name. Could you just unmute yourself and answer the question? Yes, that doesn't work. Okay, so mandatory reporting. I'm just going to pause, and if anybody can unmute themselves and answer the question, I'm absolutely happy to answer it.
Sorry, Dawn, it was me. I was just saying it's really, really important to victims to feel they can talk about their abuse and seek that support without the worry of it being reported if they're not ready. So it's really, yeah, fantastic campaign. And
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Let me just see if I can see the chat. Right. Carla, the bit about mandatory reporting. Okay, so there is a Home Office and consultation out right now. I'm sure some of you in social services and health will be part of that consultation as well. The government are exploring after, okay, so there was a 5-year investigation inquiry into charge of sexual abuse, historic, whether it's in children's homes, schools, scouts, like big organisations where abuse was known but not reported. And what they did is, after the 5-year consultation review, they spoke to adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And what the adult survivors said is it was known.
Oh, I'm back in. All right, lovely. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Cheers.
Anna, yeah. And it was what the adult survivors were saying. It was known by adults that the abuse was being perpetrated on them, but those adults did nothing about it. Therefore, we would hope to see the need to mandatory report any suspicions of childhood sexual abuse. And again, you know, that's part of safeguarding, isn't it? So if you think a child is at harm or risk, you should do a safeguarding. But when you bring it into sort of a rape crisis centre, 89% of our clients are adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. So therefore, they're no longer at risk to their perpetrator, theoretically. So the government are exploring the need for mandatory reporting regardless. So if we're told a perpetrator's name, we potentially will be duty bound to report that, which is incredibly dangerous, along with counselling notes being taken into evidence by prosecution and defence, that if somebody feels that they want to work through their trauma, but actually there is a potential that they will be re-traumatised by going through the criminal justice system with us having to report, the criminal justice system will interrogate them, etc., and any of the family members, and then potentially put their lives on hold for 3 to 5 years. When we understand that actually the outcome for anything that goes to through the criminal justice system is less than 3%. So we are campaigning against rape crisis centres having to mandatory report. Having said that, obviously we've got safeguarding. If somebody's still at threat of harm or risk of harm, we will lodge a safeguarding. I hope that's clear, but genuinely, please unmute if you've got any questions. Because unlike others, you'll get the slides just like this and there's no narrative to it. Chloe, can I have the next slide, please?
It's not a question, but just a comment.
Yeah.
Mine wasn't from childhood. Mine was as an adult, but
Okay.
I did nothing about it at the time. Did go for counselling sort of 2-3 years later. The counselling really, really helped. I absolutely would not have gone if I had thought that that would have been reported.
Thank you. And that's what we believe. you know, like I say, 39 rape crisis centres in England and Wales, and we are working very hard. It's just the start of a process. It literally has just started, and we're working very hard to push back and get an exemption around a rape crisis centres where we have safeguarding policies in place anyway, and we recognise our need to report if there is somebody still at threat and harm, or if there's, you know, if the perpetrator is now a grandfather and he's got grandchildren that are visiting, that is a safeguarding concern. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Reclaim the Night. It's our annual event. I am showing you this because I would love for you all, or as many of you, to attend. We do it at the start of 16 Days of Activism, along with our partner organisations that are on this call at the moment. So we do a Reclaim the Night on the Friday, as 16 Days of Activism starts off. That's in Northampton. We did our first one in Kettering last year towards the end of 16 Days of Activism. So it starts on the 25th, ends on the 10th of December. We will share some details with Chloe as we build it, and we would encourage anybody to join us on that evening. And there's drummers and singing as well. Chloe, last slide. Okay, referrals. Our referrals come from various organisations, social services, council workers, GP surgeries, schools, other organisations such as Voice, to name just a few. We cover the whole of the county. That's our website details. You can do an online referral as a professional's referral. We will pick that referral up and we will contact the client within 10 working days. If we require additional information, we will come back to the referrer and gather those informations. And if it's not appropriate for us as an organisation, we will go back to the referrer and make them aware why we're not appropriate, and maybe give them additional services that they can signpost the client into. And that's it. That was really quick. Does anybody have any questions? Great. Our details are there. If you want to ask questions offline, by all means, get in touch with us. Thank you, Chloe.
Hello, everyone. I guess it's my turn. I'm Jo. I'm from Serenity, the Sexual Assault Referral Centre in Northamptonshire. So a little bit about SARCs. So a Sexual Assault Referral Centre. They're based in every county in England and Wales. And the idea is that you're generally not very far away from one, so about an hour away from a SARC. So Serenity is Northamptonshire SARC. So we cover Northamptonshire for several things. So there's several things to what Serenity does. So one, we provide forensic examinations for individuals who've been seriously sexually assaulted or raped. We offer ISVA support. So Dawn has already gone through ISVA services. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. So that's emotional support, practical support, forensic examination. So we see both adults and children. So for adults, we cover all of Northamptonshire, and for children, we cover Northamptonshire. And we're also at the moment commissioned to see examinations for under 18s for Leicestershire. So what is our service provision? So we have a 24-hour helpline number. So we have an on-call crisis worker rota, and we also have a doctor 24-hour rota. So our service is accessible 24 hours a day. Out of hours, we're not based at Serenity, but people can access our service whenever they require it. So we provide forensic examinations for the retrieval of forensic evidence, and provide immediate aftercare. So most of our referrals will come via police. About 20% of our forensic medical referrals will be via self-referrals. So people who have gone to GPs, who have contacted sexual health, they will then signpost to us, and we can have a discussion to see how best we can support them. So we also do non-acute examinations for children under 13. So often children will disclose sexual abuse or an assault after the forensic window is over, so after we can collect forensic evidence for the police. But it's always helpful for a child to come to Serenity. One, we can check to make sure that physically they're okay, provide any medical treatment if required. Currently, there's no provision for sexual health follow-ups for Northamptonshire for under 13s, so we can do that here at Serenity as well. And also, we will obviously do forensic examinations for children as well. So, like Rachel mentioned earlier, Voice commission our ISVA service, so we're quite lucky to have them embedded here at Serenity. So we have 2 adult ISVAs who will support over 18s. We have 2 child ISVAs who will support young people and their families throughout criminal investigation, and then we also have 1 complex needs ISVA. She will support any more complex cases, so you know, mental health, drug misuse, those kind of clients. And then we also have VRI suites, so video recorded interview rooms that the police can use and book for any crime related to sexual violence. It's a bit friendlier than going to a police station to be interviewed, so they can bring them here. So that's kind of a general overview to Serenity. So just a basic idea of what is the criteria for forensic examination. So we do have a very limited time frame that we can collect evidence. So you see on the right, that's the time frame for different types of assaults. So like I said, most of our referrals will come via police. So someone will report an incident to police. Police will make a referral to us, and we will see them here. We also do accept self-referrals for over 16s. Now, the only time where we would break confidentiality or do a safeguarding referral would be for someone who is 16 or 17 as they're under 18 years old. So we make that very clear. They don't have to report their incident to the police at the time, but we do make sure that they're aware that we would have to do a safeguarding referral. Similarly, if we have a self-referral who has reported a stranger rape, we do let them know that we would have to report the incident to the police as it's a public safety concern. All the evidence that we collect here for self-referrals is stored for 2 years, so people have a bit of time to decide what they want to do. Our ISVA will then take on the support afterwards to provide them with any help they might need. So I'll briefly go over the ISVA support because it's been mentioned before. So we have independent sexual violence advisors that sit here at Serenity, so they support clients from the moment they report a crime all the way when and if it gets to court. For self-referrals, we do have a criteria for our ISVAs. So just because of the volume of referrals that we have, if it's a self-referral, an incident would have had to have happened in the last 6 months, and it would have had to be a serious sexual assault, so attempted rape, etc. So our ISVA would support historic cases if they're going through a police investigation, all the way from the moment they report, and support them through the court as well. Okay, so just an example of partnership working. You have an idea of what the usual what usually happens. So like I said before, most of our referrals will come via police. For self-referrals, so this is a case where a patient presented to the GP, has disclosed a sexual assault. The GP has then rang Serenity. They've spoken to the crisis worker, where she has then ascertained what's happened, and due to the nature and when the assault happened, the patient agreed to come into Serenity to have a forensic examination, so she would have a bit of time to decide what she wanted to do, because she didn't want to report the incident straight away to the police. So we saw her, we took forensic samples, stored them here. She went to see sexual health, and an ISVA referral was made, so she was seeing one of our ISVAs here. So our ISVA made contact and was able to suggest anonymous intelligence. So that's where someone can report an incident to the police, tell them what's happened, but not tell them anything about themselves, so the police can't identify the victim. So through that was sent off. The police then came back to our ISVA, who then spoke to our client, who was then willing to engage in a police investigation. The police then recovered the forensic swabs and had them tested. Unfortunately, like many cases, they were no further actioned, but we were still able to refer our client for counselling via Rape Crisis. So that's just an example of our usual partnership working. So other organisations that we work with Service 6. So along with Rape Crisis, who we commission for counselling for adults, we commission Service 6 for counselling for under 18s. So that could be at any point from examination to when the ISVA feels like the child might need a bit more support. We of course work with Voice and Witness Care, Rape Crisis, Sexual Health Services in the county, and Northamptonshire and Leicestershire Police. That was a really quick overview of what we do. So I'll pop my email down on the chat if anyone wants to email me. Does anyone have any questions? Nope. Okay. Thank you.
So that's the end of today's session. Thank you all for joining, and thank you so much to the presenters. I really appreciate that you've attended today and shared your knowledge and information about your services. So thank you so much for that. Just a quick reminder before you go about the NSAB website and our Twitter, please do check out our website and the resources on there and the Frontline Practitioner Survey. And please do tweet us and give us a follow. Let us know that you've attended today's session. I'm just putting a link in the chat now to the evaluation form. And as mentioned earlier, if you complete the evaluation form, you will receive a certificate of attendance in a few weeks' time. But that's all from me. And again, thank you all for attending today's session.